welcome to Christopher Hole Training. My name is Chris. Today's topic is all about core workouts, and we're going to be looking at 4 ways to improve your fitness and maintain a healthy spine. And the reason we're talking about this is because when we look at many people in the gym, it could be gym users, could be trainers, they use exercises that increase the wear and tear on the spine, which is contributing to future weakness, future injury, or future disorder. So what we want to try and do is we want to try and minimize that risk and keep the spine as healthy as possible whilst improving fitness. Because inherently in improving fitness, it's about pushing the boundaries of what you're capable of, and that inherently has a risk of injury to it. So we want to try and minimize that risk of injury in the future whilst also maximizing the fitness that we can get in the future. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the 4 objectives that we're going to cover over 3 slides are to eliminate pain triggers and recognize pain, to select safe exercises, to build endurance, and to build movement. So those are the 4 ways to improve fitness and maintain a healthy spine. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be looking at it in a little bit more depth. Now, before we get into that, just want to mention, please do come to social media, which is at Christopher Hole on Twitter, Christopher Hole Training on Facebook, and Christopher Hole on Instagram. Please do come along there. It'd be great to have you there. I'm sharing more information like this on a daily basis, so you can learn more about core training, lower back pain, posture, all those different types of things, even habits, behaviors, and nutrition around health and fitness as well. Alternatively, come to my website, christopherholetraining.com, where you can find online training programs which you can get involved in and you can enroll to. If you follow this particular link, you will go to the Core Strength and Stability 12-week program. Obviously, you can find out more about it there, and if you want to enroll, it'd be great to have you on board. So, coming back to today's topic, we're looking at 4 ways to improve fitness and maintain a healthy spine. The first way that I mentioned is to eliminate/recognize pain triggers. Now, the reason I'm putting this one in, because it's not necessarily a direct way to improve fitness, but what we find is 80%, or the stat is 80% of Western population will suffer with or experience some degree of low back pain in their life. So what we want to be doing is, most people that's going to happen to, so we want to be able to recognize it, and we want to be able to, in a sense, eliminate the trigger. So the trigger could be doing 20 sit-ups. That could be a pain trigger. So we either want to eliminate this, well, first of all, recognize that that's what it is, and then we want to eliminate that pain trigger. It could be lifting boxes. It could be sitting down for a prolonged period of time. So again, and with regards to that, that doesn't mean eliminate sitting. That means eliminate sitting for that prolonged period of time without getting up and having a break. So if it's 30 minutes and then you start getting back pain, get up every 20 minutes, have a walk around, sit back down again, and then you'll be able to continue working. How long you need to get up and get around, that could be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It depends on your type of back pain. But again, you've got to recognize that and, in a sense, eliminate that pain trigger. Because what that's going to do, once the pain trigger goes, or what we understand by a pain trigger, that's a health problem that we need to manage before we can even think about the fitness thing. And this is what we're talking about this slide for, because we're trying to make, first of all, the spine, in a sense, healthy, and then we can go about making the core fitter. Now, we talk about this because pain affects how you move, so you will manage how you move so you don't feel pain. So you can see this guy over here. It's not necessarily the greatest example, but if this guy was feeling knee pain, lower back pain, whatever it might be, or pain in general, he will manage and change how he moves. So this could be a strategy that he has to minimize the risk of that original pain. But what he's then doing, he's then increasing the risk of future injury somewhere else. Because if it's his back that's giving him the problem, you can see here his knee and his ankle and his foot is in a slightly more inefficient, slightly more at-risk position. So that's going to increase the wear and tear here, and then a pain could manifest in one of these 3 areas. So what we want to be doing is we want to be getting into the best position possible. Now, that doesn't mean we have to be robotic, but what it does mean is getting strong in the strongest position will allow you to have a greater margin for error when you come outside of it. What we find at the moment is that a lot of people are very weak in what should be a strong position. If they can make that stronger, it will allow this position to be stronger, if that makes sense. So in a sense, it's pulling up the bar to make that bar stronger, if that makes sense. Or put that bar in a stronger position, put the body in a stronger position. So the pain can prevent a healthy core. So it's in a sense, it's a stumbling block to having a healthy core. And again, as I mentioned, it's going to increase your risk of injury in the future. So that's one thing, or the first thing that we really want to be focusing on. So number 1 is to eliminate / recognize any pain triggers that you might have. If you can eliminate those pain triggers, that will help how you move, that will help your risk of injury in the future, and that will allow you to have a healthier spine and a healthier core. So what we're now going to talk about is the second way, and this is selecting safe exercises, or as I should say, safer exercises. Now, I like to use, with people that come to me who want a stronger core, overcome back pain, have a healthier spine, is the plank, the side plank, the bird dog, and the shoulder bridge. Now, some of the reasons I use this, now this is at a very sort of beginner and foundation level. As they progress through these exercises, yes, we still like to maintain them, but we adapt them, we progress them, and we allow them to evolve, and then they can start developing movement and skill around it. And that's what I'm going to talk about now, which is why I use these exercises, which is, number 1, they're low skill level. So for a beginner, it doesn't take a great deal of brain capacity to get into the positions. The bird dog is probably the hardest one of them because it's slightly more dynamic. The other 3 are static, in a sense, static exercises. The second reason is it reduces compression on the spine. Now, it doesn't eliminate compression on the spine, but it certainly reduces it. Exercises like leg raises, sit-ups, crunches, back extensions, twists, they have a higher compression on the spine and other structures around the spine like the ligaments, the discs, and the vertebrae. So they increase stress and tension on all of those different tissues. Whereas these 4 exercises, they reduce the compression on the spine, they distribute load evenly between the passive structures, i.e. the vertebrae, the discs, and the ligaments of the spine. So what we're doing is we're minimizing risk of damage in the future, or minimizing wear and tear for the future. So these 4 exercises are much more ideal, not one for low skill level, so a beginner can start well with them. They're also reducing compression on the spine and distributing load evenly across passive structures of the spine. Another thing, they activate multiple muscles. So as you can see here, we're activating the spinal erectors in this exercise, the glutes, the abdominal wall, so the rectus abdominis and obliques, and we've got obliques, QL, lats, and the psoas on this side of the body. So we're getting multiple muscles. We're also covering all of those muscles of the spine within those 4 exercises. So they're covering a lot of bases for sort of minimal work, if you will, or minimal effort. So we can use these 4 exercises to get the maximum out of all of the core muscles. So we're activating multiple muscles. Again, if I go back to sit-ups, crunches, back extensions, twists, leg raises, they're using fewer muscles, but also they're not using all the muscles of the core like these 4 are. So we're not building an even strength or endurance around the core, which is what we want to be doing to maintain a healthy spine. And what they also do is they introduce what I call core skills. Now, we're able to introduce these core skills because of the low skill level, because of the brain capacity to actually be in the position. And the reason I say that is when I get people doing more complicated exercises, which require multi-joint movement and the lifting of a weight, so on and so forth, most people are just focused on lifting the weight rather than what are their hips doing, what are their shoulders doing, can you feel it in the core? Can you feel, or do you feel uncomfortable in any way, shape or form? They're just trying to lift the weight, if you will. So what we're able to do with these low skill level exercises is introduce what I call core skills. Now, core skills are things like breathing. So within all these exercises, most people hold their breath because, again, they're just focusing on the position. But because of the low skill level nature of it, we can start to explore breathing. So can we breathe whilst we're doing a plank, a shoulder bridge, a side plank, which inherently most people stop breathing because of the static nature. So we would focus on abdominal breathing. Another thing we might focus on is joint awareness. So with the bird dog, can we extend our arm in front of us whilst maintaining that neutral posture of the spine? Can we extend the hip and the knee whilst maintaining a neutral posture of the spine? Or are we extending the arm and leg and arching the back? Or are we starting in a already rounded position? So it's all these things that I'm talking to my clients about when they're doing their exercise. So I'm focusing not only on the physical demands of it, but the mental demands. Because the core skill of joint awareness is just proprioception. It's just being able to position your body where you want it to be to minimize risk of wear and tear, of damage, and of potential injury. Another one is mobility and stability. So can I be stable in this position, but do I have adequate mobility to do it? So again, I'm being aware of what my body is able to do. So if I was to come up into a sort of a hip hinge position, which would be another core skill, is can I manage, when I'm bending forward to lift something, can I manage the posture of my spine? Am I getting the movement from my hip, or am I dominant in the knee? So I'm asking all these questions of people whilst they're doing these exercises, because how I describe core workouts and exercise in general, it's not necessarily what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And how you're doing it is these core skills. And these are the core skills that we want to introduce at a beginner's level. So when we come onto a more advanced level, they've got them. Because if we try and introduce them at a more advanced level, then it's only going to be harder for them to implement them. And that's exactly what this program, this online training program, is all about. It introduces you to the core skills and how to introduce them into exercise. I've not only got the 12-week program here, but I've also got the core skills workshop, the fundamental movements workshop, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, to help you build these core skills into these exercises. But not only these exercises, into everyday movement, into more advanced exercises, because as I mentioned, it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And when I watch people in the gym doing exercise, yes, they're doing a plank, but they're not necessarily doing it correctly. Yes, they're doing a side plank, or they're doing a bird dog, or they're doing a bench press, or they're doing a deadlift. Yes, they're moving the weight where the weight is meant to be moved, but they're not necessarily doing that correctly using the sort of the fundamental underpinning skills that are needed, which are these core skills that I'm talking about, which is having that joint awareness, which is being able to breathe through the exercise effectively, which is being able to brace the core, because using these three exercises, because it's just focused on that one area of the body, they are able to brace more effectively than if they're moving around. Because again, I go back to when I ask the question during, say, a deadlift or a squat, can you feel your core bracing? Can you feel your core working is another question. And they'll go, no, I was just focusing on doing the exercise. Well, okay, we need to regress back so you can feel that core working. Then we go back into the squat and then go, right, can you now feel the core working? Yes, I can, because I understand what that feels like now. So it's very much being aware of that as we go through the or this process of selecting safe exercises, but not only selecting the safe ones, but doing them in a correct way by introducing these core skills. So what we're going to do now is go on to the final 2 ways to improve fitness and maintain a healthy spine. The final 2 ways is to build endurance and to build movement. Now, what we want underneath that, as I mentioned in the last slide, are the core skills. So we want to be able to breathe. We want, or to be able to breathe effectively. We want joint awareness. So we want to be knowing, as I mentioned before, this hip hinge position. Can I maintain this position here? So am I hinging at the hip whilst lifting a weight? Or am I very knee dominant using a squat pattern? There's nothing necessarily terribly wrong with the squat pattern, but we don't necessarily want to be initiating our, or we don't want to be encouraging knee dominant sort of lifting patterns. We want to be encouraging hip dominant lifting patterns, and using a hip hinge encourages that. Again, what I find with most people that I'm working with, they're very knee dominant. They tend to squat, which is i.e. bending the knee, more so than hinging at the hip. So we want to be focusing on hinging of the hip more so than sort of bending of the knee. So we want to be aware of what our joints are doing, and we want to be focusing on our joint mobility and our joint stability. Along with that, we want to know how to brace. The final 2 things is building endurance and building movement. So the endurance is your ability to hold posture for longer without fatigue. So that would come into what we were talking about before. So with those 4 exercises, we would want to build the endurance of that. So when we come into building movement, like these 2 exercises, what we're starting to do is we've already got that underpinning knowledge of what my body's doing and when it's doing it, from joint awareness, mobility and stability. We are focusing, or we are able to focus and breathe effectively. We understand bracing and when we need to do it. And then we've got the endurance to hold that posture whilst doing all of those other core skills. The final thing to do is then increase skill level. When we increase skill level, it makes it harder for us to focus on what we are doing. So as we build skill level, what I'm doing in this picture is I would start in a sort of hip hinged position, holding onto a band, a little bit less of a hip hinge than this. What I would then do is extend my hip, extend my knee, and lift the band to shoulder height. I'm twisting from my hip and not my spine. So you can see here, there is minimal deviation of the spine. I'm maintaining that neutral posture. I'm also, because I'm rotating on the hip, this foot stays planted and static, whereas this foot comes up onto the toes and I rotate on the ball of the foot, lifting the heel. So there's a lot more going on in this exercise than meets the eye. So what I'm doing is I'm consciously being aware of what I'm doing. So that is a higher skill exercise than the plank. Now, what I'm able to do in that is build these core skills. So I'm able to focus on my breathing, joint awareness, joint mobility, joint stability, and I'm able to brace whilst using the increased skill level. Now, what this is doing is this is building motor control. Now, motor control, people debate it and how useful it is, but essentially all it's doing is just getting you to use a more effective and healthy posture and be strong in that. So when that becomes challenged under the formal use of exercise, let's say, you stay strong. You don't fall and flop, and your posture doesn't fail. So you're able to hold that. And that's essentially, along with building endurance, that's what building motor control does. Now, this requires joint awareness, as I've mentioned. What we're talking about are the fundamental movements: lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, rotating, getting up. So you've got those. Oh, you've also got walking and running in there as well. But essentially, we're talking about fundamental movements that we need to be strong. So what we're doing is, with these core workouts, is we're not just fatiguing the rectus abdominis by doing 1,000 sit-ups. What we're actually doing is building a strong core and a strong fitness all the way around, from front to side to back. And then what we're doing is we're developing the brain to maintain all of that, because it's the brain that maintains all of that. If you can repeat correct movement, your body will enact it naturally. So the whole saying that practice makes perfect isn't necessarily true. Correct practice makes correct practice, not practice makes correct practice. That's what we have to understand, and that's what that's what I'm talking about during this tutorial, is about being able to do things correctly so you can improve your fitness while maintaining a healthy spine and reducing your risk of injury as much as possible. Because we know that most injury is down to wear and tear, or in a general sense is down to wear and tear, and then it hits a tipping point, and then your back goes, your knee goes, your ankle goes, your hip goes, your shoulder goes, whatever it might be. So if we can follow these 4 ways of improving fitness and maintaining a healthy spine, we're going to reduce our risk of injury in the future, and we're going to be maintaining not only a healthy spine, but a healthier and fitter body for longer, so we can continue doing that which we enjoy doing, which could be exercise, could be a certain sport, or it could be just general activity, or everyday activity that we enjoy doing. So hopefully that's given you an understanding of core workouts and what you can start doing. So I would always recommend start with the plank, the side plank, the bird dog, and the shoulder bridge. Start there, and then you've got to progress on from there. Now, if you want to progress on from there, you can come to my Core Strength and Stability 12-week program, which gives you not only the 12-week program, but also all of these workshops. You get core skills workshops. You get the fundamental movements workshops, which talk you more practically and specifically about what I've been talking about in these slides, but more specific when it comes to the exercises that you're meant to be doing. I also give you tutorials on the plank, side plank, shoulder bridge, and bird dog, so you can progress it, regress it, you understand all the technique faults and how to overcome them, and you understand the technique points to perform it correctly. So not only do you get the 12-week program, which progresses naturally over the period of 12 weeks, but you get all the wraparound information, the tutorials, the workshops, expert interviews, so you can get more from it, not only in the program, but more from everyday life as well. So hopefully this tutorial's been useful for you. Hopefully it's given you a little bit more of an insight into core workouts and how to improve fitness and maintain a healthy spine, so you can minimize your risk of injury in the future. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Hall Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.